were saying, our mandate stems from the objectives of the Commission in terms of Section 186, subsection 1, paragraph C and D of the Companies Act 2008. CIPC is administering quite a number of pieces of legislation. Amongst them is the Companies Act itself, which talks to the issue of today in terms of the registration, because that addresses the lifespan of a company in terms of its registration, maintenance, deregistration, and reactivation, which is an opportunity for a company to come back to life. We as a commission, we strive to provide through our mandate promoting education and also capacity to the stakeholders to ensure that they are able to take informed business decisions and understand their business obligation. If one looks at our approach of the webinar today, which is more of an integration of companies and the intellectual property, is to strive and ensure that we empower our companies, because most of you can be aware that in most MOIs of a company, you would find a clause, sometimes this clause referring to how the intellectual property rights are to be dealt with upon deregistration of a particular company. One perhaps could ask a question now and say, what is this intellectual property? Intellectual property is the creation of the human mind. IP is more based on the power of imagination, using an existing knowledge base and seeing beyond the next frontier source of personal, cultural, economic advancement. We have 4 IP domains, which is your patents, your designs, your copyrights, and trademarks. One very important thing that I think this kind of a platform will assist us is the reality that intellectual property has been relatively unknown especially in this, what one could say, disadvantaged communities of South Africa. And we see this platform as an opportunity whereby we can somehow try and encourage our people to learn more and have knowledge in this untapped area, to ensure that even though the companies may be deregistered, one can look beyond the challenges and look at other ways of creating or understanding this untapped market of intellectual property. I wish you all the best in terms of engagement, and also perhaps share with you in terms of my introduction to say CIPC is an agency operating under the umbrella of the Department of Trade and Commission and Competition, which is led by the Honorable Minister Patel. I wish you all gainful engagement with our experts who will be engaging you on both the registration as well as intellectual property. I thank you. Over to you, Madam Program Director.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marumo. I am really very sorry about the earlier technical problem that we're having. I'm going to hand over you to the trademarks advisor that will talk to you more on IP. Thank you. Warren, please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Warren Rousseau. And is it? Just hold on.
Okay, right.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Warren Rousseau, and I'm going to just give you a little bit of an overview of intellectual property, how that fits into innovation and sustainability for businesses, and how that links into companies and related matters. So intellectual property, as my colleague alluded to earlier, there are several domains under this umbrella term, intellectual property, and we often refer to these different parts of intellectual property, namely, patents, designs, trademarks, copyright, trade secrets, as a bundle of rights, because very often they are interlinked. So your patent will also have a trademark, or your design would also have a trademark, or they overlap. And it's oftentimes that a business has more than one form of IP that is being generated, and that should be protected. So intellectual property is also very important for the sustainability of a business. One of the core benefits of intellectual property is that it gives you market exclusivity. So for a certain period of time, you would be the only one, in the case of a patent or design, that would be able to fully utilize that, where a trademark can potentially be renewed indefinitely every 10 years, but still it gives you exclusivity in the marketplace for, depending on what area of IP you are looking to protect. It does forms a very important competitive advantage. Also, what can be seen is that it's important to differentiate your product or service in the marketplace from your competitors, and this is where intellectual property really has a lot of benefits. It's also very often your big companies, multinationals, they really utilize these IP rights, from patents to trademarks, and the thing is, those benefits are also available to small companies, and that is what we are really passionate about, is leveling the playing field, in the sense of having more SMMEs take up these rights that are available to them. So the intellectual property can be created before the existence of a company, during the existence of a company, and can even continue after the fact. So it's very important that as the company grows, and as excuse me, different things are developed, that it is always protected. If you are working on your brand and your company name, and that's very important. It's very important to seek trademark protection, and that brings me to the next point of the commercial and the financial value of IP. So there are different ways that you can leverage your intellectual property. It can be a way to obtain financing. It is also very important for licensing fees, franchising. If you do grow and develop, then IP is really a bedrock of those commercial relationships. And then lastly, I would just like to touch on the inherent value of intellectual property, which it's a different asset class called intangible assets. And just like tangible assets on your balance sheet, your intangible assets become a separate asset class. And it's very important to know that these rights actually add value to your business. And that's basically just a short overview of intellectual property and how that fits into the innovation space, and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mara. I'm now going to hand you over to Joel. He will be able to tell you he will talk to you more about deregistration. Okay.
Good morning. Do you hear me? Am I on? I would like to thank the program director of the day who gave me this opportunity to can present on the companies and CC deregistrations and restatement. My name is Joel, as is written there. So what I'm gonna do today, I'm going to give you a brief information on the deregistration and reinstatement. So let's start with the companies and close deregistrations. So as per the Companies Act and the close corporation, okay, thank you, Rizani. So we're gonna start with the deregistration overview of the deregistration itself. So a business may refer to deregistration. You know, at first you must have a registered business or registered entity. So if it doesn't comply with and then we refer it to deregistration. So the deregistration is going to refer on the following. So upon the application, any party can apply for deregistration. So, and we've got the different types of deregistration, whereby we can start with the annual returns ones, which is the non-compliance. So the annual returns, if are outstanding for more than 2 years, succession years, we can start with the deregistration. And then secondly, if the entity itself does not carry business, and then as the CIPC or the commissioner, if that entity doesn't apply for 7 years, without receiving a request that this entity can carry business in the near future, that entity we're gonna deregister it as well. Whereby before this new Companies Act being amended under the 1973 Companies Act and Close Corporation Act, the business would have been referred for deregistration where the compliance, which is the annual returns, were outstanding for a period of 6 months. So now on the communication, on how to communicate with our customers basing on the notification, we mail the letters of informing our clients about the deregistration. And also we inform, because the letter will be the first one, it will be for the directors of the entity itself or the members of the companies. So the members of the CC, and then we send them the notification through the posting. But we only base on the addresses or the registered address that are on the entity itself or the one that we have into our system. But that one I'll alluded to when we go forward. So we inform, as I was still saying, we inform the companies, the entities itself for the deregistration. And then we also requesting it to either provide the confirmation that is still active or to lodge the outstanding annual returns. So at the time of the notification, the challenges that we are encountering with the mailing, for example, the addresses, as I was still saying, the addresses we use, the ones that we have into our database, the one that we have on the entity itself. It can be on the one that is linked with the customer code. That is the address that we are using. And again, after sending those letters, another challenge is we are having the high volumes of the retail mails. The reason being, the addresses that we use, maybe you may find that they are no more working, or the owners of the entities reallocated to another addresses. So that is the high volume of the letters of the retail mails that we receive. And then again, on the challenges, the e-contact, which is their emails, they still the ones that are linked to the customer code. As you know that when you transact with us, you must have a customer code that has the whole information of a person. So another challenge is a contact details, which is the incorrect. You may find that the email address is incorrect. The cell number as well is incorrect, whereby when we communicate, we find that the addresses are wrong. I mean, their cell phone numbers are wrong. For example, most of our customers, when they register the entities, they use the, I can say they use the third party, which is maybe the agents. And as CIPC, we don't have agents, but our customers, they use the agents to register their entity. And most of those agents, because they want money, they use their contact details if they don't receive the contact from the owner of the entity itself. So that is the challenges that we are facing. And again, on the very same annual return deregistration, if the deregistration is due to non-compliance, which is for the annual return, as long as they are not filing, that is where the problem starts. And then again, for any other reasons, there are the objection that they can be sent to our email address, which is the deregistration@cipc.co.za, whereby we attend to it. So once the entity is finally registered, no annual returns filing will proceed or will be processed. Because when you get into our system, when you file the annual return, simply the system itself, it will pop up says, this entity is on final deregistration due to non-compliance. So again, on the deregistration, I guess we're done with the deregistration because of the annual returns. Now we've got a voluntary deregistration. So on the voluntary deregistration, there are the supporting documents that needs to be accompanied the letter of the deregistration itself, whereby the customer apply for deregistration. So these are the requirements on the supporting docs, whereby we need the certified ID copy of any person signing the request. Any person that signed that request letter, we need the certified ID as the confirmation. And again, we need the text number, if available, whereby the customer can attach the text clearance that shows that this entity itself did comply with SARS. And also the statement confirming that the company or close corporation is not carrying on business, whereby there is no assets and liabilities. And then those are the things that needs to be submitted to the email address of deregistration@cipc.co.za. And then it was 10 days before. So now we amended it to be 5 working days to process that. And then after processing those application of deregistration, the entity itself will be on process of deregistration because of the application that we've received from our clients or from our customers. And then after processing it, we send it to the sender, whereby the very same people or the very same person who applied for the registration will receive a notification that such and such entity has been processed. And then after that, we will wait for the objection. Maybe we give it for 4 months. Actually, I can say we give it for 4 months. If there is no objection that were sent to us for the particular entity that we registered, and then after 4 months, we proceed with the final deregistration. Again, we have on the very same voluntary deregistration, I was still on the deregistering the entity voluntarily. So now let's just come into the objection. So the objection on the very same letter is stated that the reason for the objection, it must be stated on that letter. And also it should be before the referral of the final deregistration. That is how the voluntary deregistration goes. And secondly, on the very same voluntary deregistration, we've got the I can say we've got the objection, as I was still on the objection, that the customers can also object. Let's say, for example, you sent a deregistration letter that you want to register this entity because of the assets and liabilities, and then after that you find out, no, but this one I can object because I want to use it again. Maybe you've got problems somewhere to get a job, and then you can also write a letter of objection to can object that the registration can be stopped, and then we proceed with we cancel the deregistration. And also that thing, it takes about 5 working days to process that request. And bear in mind, or note that, very important, note that when we refer, I mean, when we send out the notification of deregistration, we can say on the notification that these entities will be on final registration this date. We publish the date, we publish the government gazette number because it has been gazetted. So when you want to do the objection, you must make sure that you send those objection letters before the final deregistration date. So these are now we are on the slide of the consequences of the deregistration, whereby the first one, the legal effect of the deregistration process, the juristic personality is withdrawn and the entity ceases to exist, ceases to proceed. Now the directors of the companies or the members of the CC may also hold the personal liability. Let's say, for example, if the entity itself, let's say it owns the property. So now those entity, I mean that entity has been deregistered. The members or the directors of that entity itself also held the personal liability of that entity itself. And also on the Companies Act 2008, the removal of that company from the register does not affect the liability. That is why I was saying those liabilities that are on the entity itself now will be on the owner of the director or the shareholders or the members of the CC. So according to the Companies Act of 1973, the liability of every director or every members of the entity itself shall continue and be enforced as if the company had not been deregistered. So now we are on the close cooperation. On the close cooperation, same has been applied on the close cooperation like on the company itself. So if the close cooperation was deregistered while having the outstanding liabilities, the members at the time of the registration shall be jointly and severely liable for those things that I was talking about. So I think I'm done with the deregistration. Now I'm going to move to reinstatement. As you know that after the entity has been deregistered, now you can reinstate it or restore that entity. It's possible to can restore it. So these are the filing requirements, what is needed according to the Section 33 of the Companies Act, Regulation 30 of the Companies Regulation on Companies, and also applies on the Close Corporations, Section 15A of Close Corporation Act, Regulation 16 of the Close Corporation Administrative Regulation. So, and also there are the requirements on the reinstatement. So, firstly, business itself may apply for reinstatement upon meeting the following requirements. So, firstly, there must be a proof that that entity itself, it was in business at the time of being finally deregistration. And secondly, there must be a proof that this entity, let's say it is having the immovable property. Also, it must prove that it has the movable property. So once the reinstatement application has been filed, all the outstanding annual returns must be filed in order to change the status to in business. For example, if the entity was on final registration and you want to deregister it, and then you apply the reinstatement attaching the whole information or the whole documentation that is needed. So when we process it, the status is going to change to be on reinstatement process, no more final registration. It will be on reinstatement process. And on the very same registration process, the fact of the matter is the outstanding annual returns need to be filed to change the statement to be in business. So here are the requirements of the supporting documents that are needed when reinstating the final registered entity. Firstly, we must have the certified ID copy of the applicant. And we must have again the certified ID copy of the owner of the customer code. The reason being, if we use the customer code without the ID copy of the owner, someone may come in after that and say, there is this entity so and so and so reinstated using my customer code. And then because it involves the 200 Rand, which is the reinstatement fee. So this money has been deducted from my account. So we must have a proof. So as CIPC, we must account for the money that is deducted from our customer. That is why we need the certified ID copy of the owner of the customer code. Thirdly, we need the multiple deed search. So the multiple deed search, we obtain it from any department of deeds, whereby they will give you the multiple deed search for all the provinces. For example, if the entity, for example, it has a movable property, for example, in Mpumalanga, it will state that earth so and so and so and so in Mpumalanga. In Limpopo have no immovable property. Gauteng, no immovable property. KZN, no. So it must state all the provinces that this entity owns 1, 2, 3, or it doesn't have anything. And also from the Department of Public Works, especially for those entities that has immovable property. The Department of Public Works, it will give the letter that says entity so and so and so has this property as a proof. Remember, when I started on the reinstatement, I said we need proof. So if there's an immovable property, the proof will be attached either by the public works letter or by the deed search. And also, there must be a sufficient proof that indicate that entity so and so and so was in business during the referral to final deregistration, and it has these outstanding liabilities or assets at the time of deregistration. And the very same person who applies for reinstatement must send a mandate that the customer must submit on his or her behalf. Let's say, as I said, I'm Jewel. Jewel did apply for reinstatement. It's not my company. So the owner of the company must also do the mandate that Jewel will do all the applicant on my behalf. And then the whole thing of after submitting the documentation for applying for reinstatement. As you know that we use the email address. So it's an email address that appear on my slides there, which is the reinstatements@cipc.co.za. That is where the application or the documentation will be processed. So the whole process take about 5 working days. And also it is advisable for the creditors to follow administrative reinstatement processes. And any interested party may apply for reinstatement. But the company's regulation 40 states that process is only complete once outstanding annual return have been filed. For example, during the time of deregistration, let's say, for example, the entity was owing 2,000 rand, and then you apply for a statement, which means after the reinstatement being processed with the amount of 200 rand, the 2,000 rand still need to be paid to apply to file the annual return to make them being in business. And then when it's in the process of reinstatement process, and then you file the annual returns, after filing the annual return, automatically the status is going to change to be in business. And only, I repeat, the company or CC itself has the duty to file the annual returns. For example, you file the annual returns for a wrong entity, out of books, for a wrong entity. Now you send an email to CIPC, you said, I filed the annual returns for a wrong entity. Who filed the annual returns? It's you. That is why we said it clear that each and every entity must be liable to their annual returns. Okay, let's continue. Creditors are advised to approach the High Court for a court order of reinstatement. So the very same court order that was obtained from the court must be submitted to the reinstatements at CIPC.co.za, and that the normal processing procedure will also be applied for the court orders for reinstatement, which means it's going to take that 5 working days as well. So the creditors also must make sure that they attach the customer code when submitting the court order, because as CIPC, we communicate with our clients using the email that is linked to the customer code. You know, most when you transact with CIPC, you must have a customer code and a password. So that is how we communicate with our clients, because when we process the document, automatically the procession or yes, after processing, everything will be gone through the customer code or through the email address or cell number that is linked to that customer code. So once the court order has been processed, the status is going to change to be in business, and the entity will be referred back into annual return deregistrations within 2 to 3 week period. So the legal personality is still intact during the deregistration process. So on that, I can say thank you.
Hi, thank you very much. It's Yogini Chetty here from Standard Bank. I just want to know, what do you mean when you say that the legal personality is still intact during the deregistration process?
Jewel, can you answer?
Thank you.
Okay, come here. Just give us a second. Just give me a minute. I'm just going to get Jewel to come answer.
Shani, should I rather answer it?
Okay, please answer.
All right. A company has got rights and obligations, right? Just like a human being, it can act, it can do things, it has got rights, obligations in order to do things, right? So as soon as a company or a closed corporation or a co-op is registered, it is a legal personality with rights and obligations in law. So meaning that while it's a legal entity, it can be sued, it can take action, it can sue somebody else, somebody can sue it can appear in court, it can go buy something, it can go into a credit agreement. So this legal entity exists, or these actions that it can take exist up until the point it is finally deregistered or dissolved if it's liquidation. So it's only at dissolution and at final deregistration that legal personality does not exist. You can put it into the sense that it's a human being that has now passed away. It cannot do any actions. It cannot be sued. The legal entity cannot be sued. So while it's in deregistration process, that legal entity still exists. So your creditors can still sue you. You can still take legal action. You can still go buy and sign a contract. So that's what we talk about. The legal personality is intact until final deregistration or dissolution. I hope that clarifies it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next question.
Just mention your name, Sean.
Chet, you can lower your hand. There is, oh, okay. The next question is from Marissa Kruger.
Marissa?
Good day, thank you. Yes, I just want to find out, you just said if it's deregistered final, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you.
So after it's been deregistered final, then it's obviously not an entity anymore and it cannot be sued. Does that also count when it's AR dereg final, or only if you've applied for deregistration and it's now final?
All right, let's clarify. In terms of the law, you're in business or you're dead, right? If you read the Act. Now, in order for us as CIPC, and I think that's where a lot of confusion, and there is an old notice, I think maybe, Shani, I will just republish it where we explain this. In order to classify what resulted in this end position, we have created administrative status descriptions. It doesn't dictate the change in the end outcome of the law. It just tells us what happened. So, for example, on a deregistration, if it's final deregistered, it's deregistered. If it's AR final deregistered, it is deregistered. It means that it was the result of an annual return non-compliance. If it says deregistered merger, it means that two companies merge and the one ceased to exist. So we have got a lot of internal descriptions that helps us to classify in terms of which legal process it is, although the end result is still the same legal position.
Okay, thank you, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, Puti,
Yeah, there was a,
do you have a question?
there was a question from Tewo Homagoro.
Yes, can I go ahead?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. It's Bhuti from Beyond Compliance Consultants. I just wanted to find out in terms of when the company is owned by a trust, the clarification where one can sue, or the legal matter in that regard. Is it possible to sue a trust? If you can just answer that for me. Thanks.
All right, Booty, number one, just clarify your question for me. Sorry, I'm now jumping in because I'm also legally qualified, and you guys are treading on the legal side of it and not the procedural side. So, all right, so Booty, firstly clarify. Are you talking about a trust, a company, or a CC that needs to be reinstated?
No, I mean when a company needs to be reinstated, but then the company is owned by the trust.
Okay, firstly, on a CC, CCs clearly state by law that it must be a natural person, right? There is a condition. So in terms, if the member is a trust, the trust is actually not the member of the CC. It's the representative of the trust that's a natural person that's actually the member. So let's say it's trust XYZ and I am one of the trustees, Christa Cloco. Yes. So actually by law, Christa Cloco on behalf of trust XYZ is the member. In those cases, the representative trustee, as per our records, needs to submit the documentation. If changes has occurred or there is conditions that doesn't fit into our website information on a reinstatement, log a ticket for the reinstatement team to say, all right, what other documents can you provide to get this through? All right, so if you're sitting with technicalities like trust and deceased and you're not sure, rather log a ticket and then the reinstatement team will clarify what is the additional supporting documents needed. If they cannot answer, we've got internal procedures where it will be referred to myself or our legal advisors to say as to what options should be provided. I hope that helps.
No, thank you very much, Christa. It really helps. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Anyone else that have a question that you would like Christa to answer?
Tebogo Magoro was noted. I'm not sure if he or she's still around. Tebogo?
I'm still here, but I think my question was answered. So basically, I had a company registered in 2016. 2020, I check and it says AR de-registration process. I do not the company does not have immovable property. I was just wondering if reinstatement is possible there.
So that one, if the entity is in, it shows the process of the registration on the compliance of the annual returns. So when you file the annual returns, automatically the status is going to change to be in business because it's still in the process.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
What you're going to do, my sister, just file the annual returns automatically, it will change to be in business.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, is there any other questions that you have?
I see Marissa Kruger.
Marissa?
Okay, sorry. I just want to find out, so I have clients who are in AR dereg process, and in August I did not deregister. Now I want to find out, can I apply for deregistration without submitting all those outstanding annual returns to date? Or are they going to decline my request because I'm not submitting all the outstanding returns? The client is not trading, it's just dormant, but for some reason, AR is just not final deregistered. I have lodged a query and they say next time. Thank you.
Marissa, can you just tell me exactly what question you have?
Oh, sorry. I want to find out if my client's status is already AR dereg process, but in August it did not deregister. So now I want to apply for deregistration. Do I first have to update all my annual returns that are outstanding? Or will it allow me to deregister even if I don't submit all those outstanding annual returns?
Yes, that is
okay, Joel, let me answer. Joel, would you mind if I answer it quickly, please?
Okay, right, it's right.
Okay. All right. What you have to note, unfortunately, the AR deregistration is not very efficient. We know that. Because here's the thing. In order for us to deregister a whole bunch of companies, we have to pay postage fee because we need to issue by registered mail notices. Right. So for this current bulk deregistration, it took us 2.5 years because it cost us 28 million rand to do the deregistration. Now, in terms of public service, I need a contract with the South African Post Office, and it took me a year to get permission in order to procure their services. And now you also have to note, because we only have got an X amount of money, we can only deregister a certain amount of entities at a time, right? Because unfortunately within government, we have got strict protocols regarding management, and we cannot exceed our budgets. So what happens is, once we've got the contract in place, we will then say, all right, we're going to start with the first, in this one that will happen on the 30th of August. We started with 330,000 entities, right? We give the data to the South African Post Office. We could only do 330,000, so we took the oldest ones that we could. We have got about 800,000 entities on deregistration at the moment. So we could only take 330,000 in the batch. We publish the list of the ones that we are planning on doing the deregistration component, and then we finish it up. So your client's entity may fall outside of that bracket period for which we determined the 330,000 entities. So that's the one thing. So it may have fallen outside of that time period for the 330. The next one is that such, all the banks might come back and say, sorry, we've got outstanding tax returns for this one. Oops, sorry, this company owns us 500 of whatever. Kindly do not deregister in order for us to recoup our outstanding tax liabilities or our or the bank's liabilities. So what you need to do is, when you log your ticket, be very specific and ask, all right, I was on the B list that you published for final deregistration. Why was this not deregistered? And if there's an exception, who made the objection? Is it SARS? Is it Nedbank? Is it Standard Bank? Is it Al Baraka Bank? And then we'll give you the bank. We don't have more than that detail. So we need to go determine whether you fell into that bracket period or whether the banks have objected. So as I said, we're sitting with over 800,000 entities in deregistration. We can only do an X amount at a specific time.
Thank you, I understand that. So if I want to apply now for full deregistration, do I have to do the annual return to date or not?
No. Okay. Your company, there is a, because they have objected to it, because there may be outstanding liability or it's outside of that period. If you want to have it done quicker, they will have to file all outstanding annual returns and the AFS if they are dormant, and then apply for voluntary deregistration. Because remember, we cannot put you into voluntary deregistration if you've got an outstanding obligation in terms of the Companies Act, which is the filing of annual returns. So your client will then have to file the annual returns in order to bring it to an in-business status and then follow the voluntary deregistration process. We can't top and change the two processes.
Okay.
Because you have to address the non-compliance first.
Yes, okay. Thank you, I understand. Thanks for answering.
Can I just ask, I see Celia da Costa have a hand up. Can you please ask your question? You will have to unmute yourself, Cecilia. Your hand is still up. You must unmute yourself and please ask your question. I think that's your name.
Okay, if Cecilia is not online, we've got Fatima, Grant, and Joseph. Their hands are up, and Karen. Maybe they can shoot.
Fatima, please ask your question.
Shani, mute your speakers. Shani, mute your speakers.
Yes.
Mute your speaker on the laptop. It's giving feedback.
That much better. Okay. Can you hear me now clearly?
Yes.
Fatima, you can ask the question. Okay. Raj, do you have a question that you would like to answer? To ask her?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello, it's Grant speaking.
Yeah, we can hear you, Grant.
From the conversation, I gather that if we are on AR deregistration and we haven't filed our annual financial statements and we haven't filed our tax returns, the deregistration process cannot be completed because there will be objections from SARS. Is that correct?
No. You need to distinguish between the two elements here, right? So you are currently in AR deregistration process and you have to file your annual returns.
Yes.
In terms of the Companies Act, when you file an annual return, you must simultaneously either file your audited financials or your AFS, right? That is not a SARS requirement. That's a Companies Act requirement.
Okay,
So you can file the annual return. Yes?
If our auditors are still busy with the financial statements and we cannot comply with the annual returns because the auditors are still busy, how can we be deregistered?
Okay, here's the thing. The Act has made provision for this in the regulations. The regulations state you only file your latest approved financial statements or AFS, which means if you are due to file annual returns today, right? But your financials is not been done yet because you had an end of July financial year end. You don't wait for the 2020 financial statements. You use the 2019 financial statements because that's the latest approved.
Okay. So in our case, we have a very unique situation where our auditors are busy finalizing 2016 year end. So obviously that's very far away, and they've also lodged a non-compliance with CIPC, but we can't file the annual return with CIPC because we only have a 2015 annual financial statement. So how do I get around
what you do is you need to log a request for the financial statements team, advise them of the holdup, and ask them whether the latest approved, like 2015, will be sufficient in order to continue. Unfortunately, the AFS and FAS component lies with our compliance unit. It's separate from the AR, although it's interdependent. So log a ticket, ask them for the advice. You want to file your annual returns. Which AFS or FAS will they accept in order for you to proceed with your 2020 AR filing?
Okay. So that would apply for all the outstanding AR filings. Okay. And then how does the banks have also contacted us to say they've been notified that our companies under AR deregistration from CIPC. What is the bank going to do now because of this for non-compliance with the CIPC?
The banks is just trying to address their risks, right? Because why? If you are finally deregistered, they are going to struggle to recover whatever is owed. They have to go to the High Court in order to reinstate and then to attend to the necessary. So, sorry, I lost your first part of your question. What's the banks going to do? So what the banks have done, because they buy our data and they understand our data, I think that most banks buy our data every week or every second week, a full dump of our database. They will remind their clients to file the annual returns. That's basically the only thing that they are doing. It's just trying for them to mitigate.
So there's no freezing of bank accounts or anything like that, or
that you will have to take up with your relevant bank, because we can't dictate to them what the internal procedures are.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, that was just very confusing because our auditors are busy with the financials. They've reported us we can't comply because they haven't finished, and then the bank is putting us under pressure to submit, but we can't submit because we don't have financials, and you know, it's just like what comes first, the chicken or the egg? So you say I must log a ticket and speak to the financial statement people asking what financials we need to submit, what they will be satisfied with.
Especially considering, remember when your auditors have logged a complaint with IRBA, IRBA sends us a copy of that non-compliance. It's called a reportable irregularity. Yeah. We are by law, by IRBA's legislation, required to get that if there is a non-compliance with the Companies Act. So they're probably you're probably under investigation in our compliance unit as well. So they will have to guide you on how to troubleshoot this.
Okay. I wasn't sure if I need to send an email to written objection to the deregistration at CIPC, or how or what I was to do.
As I stated, contact the financial statements unit on the or the XBRL on the QRS system. That's dealt with. Those two areas are dealt with by our compliance unit.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, Fatima, is there a question for her?
I just want to find out the contact details for the register at the Department of Public Works.
My apologies, I couldn't hear the question.
Shawnee, can we perhaps just ask, there's somebody who has their hand up on camera and I can't see a name. Please ask your question. You must just unmute yourself, please.
Cindy Alexander. Can I continue, Jimmy?
You must unmute yourself, please. We can't hear you.
I did. Can you hear me now?
Please unmute and raise your question, please. Cynthia Alexander, you've been raising your hand. Kindly unmute and raise your question, please.
Can you hear me?
Jimmy, can you ask your question?
Hello. Okay, I just want to find out how long does the company to be deregistrated?
Okay, Fatima, unmute yourself. I see your hand is still raised. Can you unmute yourself and ask your question? Jimmy, you need to unmute yourself in order to ask your question.
I did unmute. Can you hear me now? Yes. Hello? Can you hear me now? Yes. I just want to find out how long does it take for a company to be deregistrated?
You muted him, Alma. How long does it take? Alma, you muted him.
Joe, are you going to answer that question?
Jimmy, can you ask your question again, please?
I've heard the question. How long does it take to do a deregistration? Jimmy, to be honest, under the current COVID-19 situation that we are in as a country and as a world, it's not really a fair question. The reason being is that once we've put you into, I'm going to talk about voluntary deregistration first. If we put you into voluntary deregistration, we usually in the past took 3 to 4 months because we have to issue letters, and it takes a while for us to post it. We do about 10,000 letters in a month just on the voluntary deregistration part. Now, under the current COVID-19, we don't. Our staff is working from home, so they need to come in on specific dates to pick up. Then it's also the dependency of the post office, whether they are able to post the letters as that needs to be done. So currently, we usually take 3 to 4 months, but as a general rule, we cannot currently comment on it because of the COVID-19 situation, and we're not sure how it impacts on internal resources of the CIPC, how quickly we can do things, as well as our dependencies, for example, like posting the letters.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions? Barbara?
I'd like to find out the Department of Public Works. What is the contact number?
Currently, we have a problem. We've received formal complaints that they are not the numbers that, or you need to go to the head office in Pretoria. It's within their finance department. The contact numbers apparently is not working. So we as CIPC are starting internal discussions as to how to be going to engage them to find out what's going on. So currently, we cannot give contact details.
Thank you very much.
Okay, is there any other questions? There's questions that I've took out from the chat. Is there anyone on the chat that has question? Whitney, Chantel, Cecilia, you said that we haven't answered your question. Do you have any? Would you like us to answer any questions that you still may have? Cecilia Foster?
Chantel says yes.
Okay, Chantel, ask your question. Chantel, unmute yourself and then you can ask your question. Okay, Chantel, I cannot hear you. You have to unmute yourself, Chantel, in order to ask your question.
Okay, while Chantel is trying to unmute herself, quick question. Is there any general email address for general help? It's CIPC.
You have to go to our QRS system on our CIPC website and log a ticket.
QRS system.
Yeah. Go onto the CIPC website, www.cipc.co.za, and then you will see that we have our query resolution system. You can our inquiries, then you can log your query on it.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? Can anyone else see any hands up?
I think
Karen, is your hand up? Can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, Krista's answered my question, but it's still not clear to me. We've deregistered a company. On my profile, if I log into CIPC, it still shows it shows deregistered, but it still shows annual returns in red. Can I never get that away?
You're basically referring to the dashboard, is that correct?
Yeah, so when I log on to CIPC, all my companies come in because I've got a PO number, and the one that says deregistered, it says deregistered. I went through all the process, but then it says annual return and it's got a red mark there.
Yeah, it will show like that.
Forever?
Yes, because an entity can be restored at any given point in time if they meet the requirements.
All those deregistered that went through the process.
I think the best option is log a ticket, make a screenshot. Let's make sure that we understand you, because I don't think we're understanding each other. Log a ticket for the annual return team and make a screenshot of what you're referring to. It's going to be easier for, then we can see what you're referring to.
Okay, will do. Thank you very much.
Okay, is there any more questions? Rusani, can you see any more questions?
I can see Loli.
Okay.
Loli, are you there?
It's Lolly. I'd just like to know, once we've submitted the documents for reinstatement, how long does it take? Hello?
Krista?
Joel, Joel is the manager for the area. Please respond. It's not a legal question.
The reinstatement take only 5-15 days. If you
Sorry,
submit
get
the
that?
relevant email address.
Which email address did you use, Chantal? Or Lolly?
I used reinstatement, re-instatements. They've got the documents which they confirmed yesterday.
When was it sent us? Because it takes only 5-14 days.
Well, I've been sending the documents since Monday and they say they haven't got it. Until I logged a ticket yesterday, I finally got a response to say they've got the correct documents. And I have sending it in the correct format, which is PDF.
Yes.
And I've had a lot of issues because I keep on phoning and they say they haven't got it. And finally, yesterday I logged
then they acknowledge it. It will be done in 5 working days.
5 working days. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Chantal?
Okay, so please, you have a question?
Hi, yes, I have a question. I posted it on the chat, but I think maybe you missed it. It's relating to, can you hear me? Okay. It's relating to a voluntary deregistration, right? We submitted 3 companies for VC earlier this year. 2 have been finally deregistered, but then the one is still in business. I have queried multiple times. We submitted in March and queried in May. We had to resubmit in May. We resubmitted. I queried again. Obviously, we had the whole COVID issues and we understand there were delays. But a few weeks ago, I sent another ticket and the ticket said that my application has been found, it's tracked, and it will be processed. And it will take another 4 months to final deregistration. But still today, the company is still in business. It doesn't show that it is in deregistration process. So it's been since March trying to get this company deregistered. Who can I take this up with? Because we submitted 3, 2 have been finalized, and it's just this one that is a problem.
So the one in question, when was it processed?
It was submitted for the first time in March. When we followed up in May.
Yes.
Which first one?
What says the query? What says the query? Maybe you can.
So I want to understand the turnaround time. What is causing the delay? Who can I speak to? Because I've logged tickets, I've sent emails, and.
All right, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt quickly here. Can you please quickly give us the registration number for Joel? Then Joel will look at the history and then respond via the ticket. So just quickly give the registration number to Joel and he can check it out for you. We will not be able to solve it via this process because we have to go back into the system. So give us the registration number, then you don't have to send emails and everything all over the place.
Okay, Joel, where do I get Joel's details? Is it on here?
Yes.
What is your, give me your registration number so that we can follow it up.
I should give you my what number, sorry?
Your email address and the registration number of the entity in question. It will be easier in that way.
Okay. Let me find you here and then I'll send you a message. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
All right.
So, Piso, you have your hands raised?
No, that was me speaking. I'm done.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay. Okay, we have, is there any other questions that you have? Okay.
I don't have anything from my side.
Thank you.
Busani?
Yes, Mr. Maro.
Okay, yes. I would like to, I think we only left with a minute or two. I would like to thank all participants and also encourage anybody who may not have been satisfied with the response or any other thing, you can still follow up and send through other avenues, platforms of engaging us. We really appreciate that and wish you the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Modiba.
Thank you, Madam Director.
Thank you. That is the wrap.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.